Part 61. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 601. Antonio's eyes lit up, but Su Ming's eyes went dark. The former was excited, and the latter was purely realistic. The forest was dark in the evening, and some light could be barely seen through the gaps in the woods, but suddenly there was only the sound of flapping wings. A large group of flying foxes filled the forest, flapping their wings to cover the surroundings tightly. The wingspan of an adult flying fox can reach 1.5 meters, which is larger than the round table of a family of 3. Hundreds of flying foxes gathered together, and it was no exaggeration to describe them as covering the sky and the sun. Seeing so many flying foxes appear, everyone present was inevitably nervous. This thing can suck blood. If so many flying foxes rushed in together, these 6 people would be sucked dry in a blink of an eye. This group of flying foxes seemed to be passing by. At first, they did not notice the group of people in the forest, and flew over their heads and around them in large numbers. But soon, the smell of the deer's blood attracted them, and several flying foxes left the large group and rushed towards the awning. There was still some distance from the bat net. The big flying fox seemed to find something wrong ahead and deviated from the original route and turned around to avoid the bat net in front. However, the small awning was surrounded by bat nets and above. No matter which direction it flew from, it would definitely fall into the net. Before, Su Ming was still wondering, the big flying foxes can use sound waves to find the bat net. They are not stupid, why would they fall into the net? But after watching for a while, Su Ming understood that they are not stupid, but there are too many of them. More and more big flying foxes smelled the blood and flew towards the awning. Some of the flying foxes in the front found the net and turned around to avoid it, but immediately there were flying foxes rushing over, one after another, and the whole scene was a bit chaotic. The big and small flying foxes often collided in the air. Due to the interference of other flying foxes, the sound waves did not play a big role at this time. Finally, the first flying bat was caught in the net. The thick bat-catching net was hit by the big flying bat and dented inside. The caught big flying bat had red eyes, bared its teeth and made sharp cries. For animals, the instinct of eating is overwhelming, and they will not give up just because the road ahead is blocked. Soon, more and more bats were caught in the net, and more big flying bats kept rushing up. At first, Su Ming thought that the net used by Antonio was too thick and too big. At this time, it can be seen that Antonio is experienced. The big flying bats are large in size, strong in impact, large in number, and have sharp teeth. If it were an ordinary net, it would have been broken and bitten long ago. At this time, although the surrounding large nets were shaken by the big flying bats, they were very solid. The nets distributed around are not only used to catch flying bats, but also a protective measure for the 6 people around the awning. If it were an ordinary net, it would have been broken by the flying bats long ago. The big flying bats will not be satisfied with just one deer. More and more flying foxes rushed into the net, and the large nets on all sides were pulled out into terrifying arcs, ready to fall at any time. Antonio saw that the time was almost right, and shouted to Sulejun, "Su, fuel. Light the fire quickly." Bats are afraid of fire, so at this time, just light a bonfire to disperse the large group of flying foxes outside, and then Antonio can easily capture the remaining guys caught in the net. Sulejun quickly took out a small torch from his backpack, which was gas-powered. There was a button on it, and a blazing flame would come out of the torch when it was pressed, a bit like the Olympic torch. With such a delay, one side of the bat-catching net was about to collapse. Although the net was strong, the branches tied to the net squeaked and could break at any time. The big flying foxes that pounced on it were stimulated and screamed wildly. Antonio screamed, "Su, what are you waiting for, you yellow-skinned pig? Do you want us all to die here?" Su Ming's mouth twitched. This old bastard was used to being bossy, regardless of the occasion. Now you are asking Sullijan to do something, why don't you be polite? Besides, I'm still sitting next to you when you scold a bald donkey in front of a monk. Sullijan shook the solid fuel in his hand, his face looked a little hideous under the hint of the torch, and said sinisterly, Mr. Antonio, I have a question for you. The surrounding bat-catching nets shook wildly and could be knocked open at any time. Antonio realized that Sullijan was not right. He coughed, squinted his eyes and tried to squeeze out a smile, and said, Su, what are you going to do? The two bodyguards who followed him approached Sullijan from both sides without making a sound. As soon as they took a step, Sullijan immediately noticed it and grabbed a rope hanging from a tree. The rope was connected to a bat net at the back, and it was a slip knot. If you pulled it hard, the net would fall down. The two bodyguards stood still and dared not move. Once the bat net was opened, the bats would rush in. No one except Sullijan with a torch would survive. Cousin, let's talk it over, Su Ming shouted quickly. His acting was superficial and his tone was very exaggerated. Su Meng stepped forward calmly and stopped Su Ming behind him. Sullijan glanced at Su Ming, stared at Antonio and asked concisely, Mr. Antonio, what will I be responsible for when you two cooperate in the future? Oh, Su, you are too suspicious. Antonio immediately realized what Sullijan was worried about and said, of course you are still my agent, Su, we have been cooperating happily for so many years, right? Sullijan's mouth twitched twice, and he seemed a little hesitant. Taking advantage of his distraction, the Italian bodyguard on the left suddenly attacked, leaping up like a leopard, punching Sullijan in the stomach, causing Sullijan to bend his waist. The other bodyguard raised his hand, and a dagger flashed with a cold light, nailing Sullijan's hand holding the rope to the tree trunk. In a flash, even Su Ming didn't see what happened clearly. Another cold light flashed, and a dagger pierced Sullijan's shoulder without hesitation. Sullijan screamed, and the arm holding the rope suddenly softened. Blood gushed out of the wound like a fountain. Sullijan opened his eyes wide, and tried in vain to press the wound with his other hand. The bodyguard holding the dagger in reverse grabbed the rope with one hand, and wiped Sullijan's body back and forth with the dagger in the other hand. Without even looking at it, he casually inserted the dagger back into the side of the boot. Sullijan's eyes almost popped out, looking at Antonio in disbelief. His body leaned against the tree, and he slid down softly. One hand was still nailed to the tree, and there was a wound on his shoulder that looked like a child's mouth, and blood was oozing out. Su Ming's eyes tightened. Antonio's two bodyguards were too skillful, absolutely professional killers, and they cooperated very well, like two efficient and accurate killing machines. If they were dealing with him just now, he might have died. In terms of strength, the two of them combined were not as good as Su Ming, and might not even exceed him, but in terms of efficiency and professional level, he could not be compared with these two bodyguards. He glanced at Antonio. This old bastard was too cruel. He killed Sullijan mercilessly in front of him. What did he mean? *U0026 at 1, Antonio was shocked and roared wildly, as if his butt was burned by fire, and rushed to the torch that fell on the ground. Squeak, bang. Sullijan's blood was gushing out, hot and fishy, more than 10 times more than that of the little muntjac. A strong smell of blood filled the forest, immediately attracting all the flying foxes in the sky. With a crisp sound, a branch tied with a net rope finally broke under the weight. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 602. Bang. A very slight crisp sound, but it whipped everyone's heart like a whip. The flying foxes in the sky went out in groups in the evening. The blood volume of the muntjac alone could only attract a small part of them. The rest of the large group flew around in the distant forest to hunt. But the blood gushed out of Sullijan's neck, which attracted all the flying foxes nearby. The branches that were already overwhelmed finally couldn't support it and were broken by the flying foxes that kept rushing over on the net. Time seemed to stop for a moment. As if in slow motion, the bat-catching net on one side slowly fell down. Following that, the overwhelming bats rushed in like a black tornado. Flutter, 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 the ears were filled with the sound of bats flapping their wings, and countless flying foxes were wreaking havoc in the small space. In the blink of an eye, several large flying foxes were hanging on the unfortunate muntjac, opening their mouths and biting down. Su Ming's mental power was too late to protect him. Sulajun, who fell to the ground against the tree, was almost covered by a layer of flying foxes, gnawing at his body frantically. He who abuses himself will suffer. The other three sides and the net on his head that were used to protect him from the attack of bats just now have now become a cage. If there were no nets on the other sides, most of the bats would fly away from other directions after rushing in, and the remaining few would be attracted by Sulajun's body, and the other few people could use torches to escape. But now, flying foxes kept pouring in from the gap on one side, and the people inside couldn't run out, and the bats that rushed in couldn't find the exit, opening their mouths, red eyes, and ferociously looking for objects to bite. Su Ming's eyes went dark, and he was knocked to the ground by several flying foxes at once. He couldn't see what was happening around him at all, and a slight pain came from his neck immediately. It bit me. The moment he felt the pain, Su Ming released a stream of mental power. What a joke, biting others is fine, but if he was bitten by a foxbat, wouldn't it be a waste of time? The mental power immediately controlled the foxbats near his body, and a natural majesty surged out. The so-called domineering aura was just like that. In front of Su Ming's mental power, all animals belonged to lower animals. The dozens of big foxes lying on him were like being scalded by boiling water, screaming and running away in a hurry. The guy whose teeth had already bitten the skin on his neck was unlucky. Su Ming grabbed his neck and threw him to the ground. Just when he was about to use his mental power to help Su Ming, he heard a roar of ho 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 from his side. Su Ming was completely dumbfounded when he saw it. This is too fierce. Su Ming, like the berserker in the game, held a stick in one hand and turned his body madly on the spot, turning into a human-shaped windmill. All the foxbats that approached him were knocked away by the huge centrifugal force. If they were unlucky enough to be hit by the two big sticks in his hands, they would immediately break their bones. This was probably a unique life skill in the mountains in the past, used to deal with the siege of flying animals. According to his exaggerated rotation speed, if he held two weapons with larger areas in his hands, the airflow he created would prevent small flying animals such as poisonous mosquitoes and wasps from approaching. However, there were too many foxbats after all, and Su Ming was not a real berserker. It was impossible for him to protect his whole body completely. Seeing that he was about to be bitten, Su Ming quickly separated a mental force to disperse the foxbats around Su Ming. "It's me. Don't hit me," Su Ming shouted, and ducked to Su Ming's side. The stick in Su Ming's hand just stopped less than 5 centimeters away from Su Ming's shoulder, and the wind from the stick made his face slightly painful. "Be careful." Su Ming uttered the two words very stiffly. Su Ming nodded, and his mental power protected the two of them like a small shield, but he suddenly felt a little depressed. "Damn, I have been with me for so long and I haven't learned to speak. How come I can speak after being with Xiaohu for 2 months? Be careful, it seems that this kid often says this sentence." The others were not so lucky. When Su Ming rescued Su Ming, Antonio and the 2 bodyguards had been knocked to the ground by a large group of foxes, howling wildly and twisting their bodies to escape, but attracted more foxes. These bloodthirsty creatures who bully the weak and fear the strong immediately changed their targets after being driven away by Su Ming. Although the 2 bodyguards were powerful, that was relative to humans. Under the attack of countless fearless giant foxes, the 2 professional bodyguards had no power to fight back, and rolled and howled wildly with foxes all over their bodies. Su Ming was about to use his mental power to save them, but when the time came, he hesitated. Just now, the two bodyguards had hit Su Lejun without any scruples in front of him. This was also a demonstration to him, and it was tantamount to warning him that if he didn't obey, they could easily kill him. Today, he witnessed two bodyguards injuring people. If he didn't call the police, Antonio would have a big handle on him. He could only choose to cooperate with him or turn against him completely. Moreover, looking at the skills of these two people, they must have killed people. Antonio is their employer, and he must not be a good person. His own enterprises are all upright and visible. After hard work, he finally has the scale he has today. If he cooperates with them and steps into the mud pit, it will be very troublesome in the future. Su Ming's mind was full of lightning and he hesitated for only 2 or 3 seconds. Antonio and the two bodyguards were already wrapped up by foxes. Layers of foxes were lying on them, looking like black super-large cocoons. The cocoons kept making heart-wrenching screams and shaking wildly. A shiny dagger stretched out from the big cocoon, and a big hole was pierced through the big black cocoon. Several foxes screamed and flew away, but new foxes rushed up immediately to fill the gap. He, Su Ming picked up the torch from the ground and held it in front of Su Ming. The two of them hid in the small awning and watched everything happen quietly. About half a minute later, the 3 cocoons finally stopped moving, and the foxes lying on them flew away one by one. The 4 people on the ground were dead, and the exposed muscles were bitten to pieces, the wounds were pale, and the blood was sucked out. It seems that the fox bats not only drink blood, but also eat meat. The 2 bodyguards' strong chest muscles were gnawed flat, revealing their white bones. They will never have a chance to wear a 36D cup in the future. This guy was still thinking about how to plot against each other all the way, and in the blink of an eye, the other party died inexplicably. I told you to pretend to have big breasts by wearing tight vests. What's the big deal about big breasts? Su Ming rolled his eyes. Stop right there. The mental power turned into a huge net that covered the sky and the earth, covering all the fox bats nearby. Want to run away after eating? It's not that easy. Although the fox bats are fierce in sucking blood, they have no ability to resist under the mental power. On the contrary, once they came into contact with the mental power, Su Ming clearly felt that all the fox bats immediately became docile, like animals in the tribe seeing their patriarch. Su Ming was slightly stunned. This situation had never happened before. In the past, when I used my mental power to suppress them directly, animals I didn't know would still show some resistance. The more ferocious the animals were, the more resistance they showed. It took more than a week for those alligator gar to be obedient. But the flying bats were very obedient, without any resistance at all, which was completely different from the ferocity they had just shown. One by one, the flying bats folded their wings and wrapped their bodies, and hung upside down in rows on the branches around them, staring at Su Ming with their red eyes, looking very scary. Will they all turn into pale handsome men and beautiful women in a puff of green smoke in the next second? Su Ming thought anxiously. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 603. Since he had spiritual power, Su Ming found himself a little bit supernatural. When he saw an animal, he wondered if it would become a big monster. Would a python become a dragon in the future? Would a cow become a unicorn in the future? Oh, there is an Asian unicorn at home now. He looked up at the sky, wondering if the moon would be round tonight. Then he slapped his forehead. Vampires are not werewolves. Transformation has nothing to do with whether there is a moon or not, and whether the moon is round or not. Besides, the moonlight can't penetrate into the deep mountains and old forests. After waiting for a long time, the bats didn't transform. They hung upside down on the tree, like they were full of fruits, waiting for Su Ming's instructions with their red eyes. It seems that I thought too much again. You scared me. I'll settle accounts with you later. Su Ming frowned and looked at the corpses on the ground. Antonio's sudden death was something no one had expected. Su Ming was still thinking about how to deal with this old guy on the way here. They suddenly died, which eliminated the most direct threat to him. Every advantage has its disadvantages. A new problem is faced. How to deal with these bodies? Dealing with them does not mean burial or cremation, but whether to call the police. He must come up with a solution. His mind quickly turned, connecting all the clues of the past few days to come up with the best solution. Antonio, 2 bodyguards, and Sulejun, did the 4 people enter the country with legal procedures? Whether they entered the country legally or not, whether they have legal identities, are of different natures. If they entered the country illegally, these people theoretically did not exist in the country, so their disappearance may not attract attention. But there are a few points that can be confirmed. The hotel they stayed in the county must have been registered. In addition, Antonio came to Suntown in the name of investment, and he and Sulejun had appeared in Suntown several times. Comprehensively judging, they should have entered the country legally, otherwise the 2 bodyguards would not have only daggers on them. After observing for the past few days, Su Ming found that no more people had contact with them. If he did not call the police might not notice it. In addition, the location of the incident is very remote. If I don't tell them, maybe no one will find them when they turn into dry bones. But Antonio came to China on behalf of a foreign company. The most likely possibility is that he entered China legally. If the company behind him pursues it, or if he is unlucky, once it is dug up in the future, and all the clues are traced to him, it will be hard to say. Another option is to call the police now. The wounds on their bodies can prove that the cause of death has nothing to do with me, but it is inevitable to mix myself in. After all, there are no eyewitnesses and evidence at the scene except me and Su Ming. From the perspective of criminal investigation, the chain of evidence has loopholes. The key is that if the murder case and the vampire bats are spread, it is likely to affect the construction of nursing homes in the future. Even though this place is far away from Suntown, it is caused by Suntown after all. Who dares to buy a nursing home in Suntown in the future? Weighing the 2 sides, one is the possible homicide lawsuit in the future, and the other is the economic impact that will definitely appear. Su Ming waited for a moment and decided that the former was more troublesome. Call the police. After thinking for half an hour and making sure that all the details had been sorted out, Su Ming finally decided to make a phone call. He first contacted 2 people, the company's lawyer Liang Sichen and Nangong Yan's uncle Nangong Cheng. Nangong Cheng had no direct relationship with the Moxie County Police. After all, the 2 sides were in the same system and had a lot of experience in dealing with such unfortunate things. He could give him some advice. Su Ming was not going to hide too much from Nangong Cheng. Except for the mental power, he could tell the truth about everything else. To find lawyer Liang, he needed him to carry out the specific implementation. He hoped that in the name of protecting the investment, the police would try to control the news within a certain range. Of course, Su Ming was not going to tell Liang Sichen the specific situation on the phone, but asked him to come as soon as possible for a 2-way interview. Just as he was about to call Nangong Cheng, Su Ming found a very speechless situation. There was no signal in the mountain. This was really hummed up. After calculating, he should have enough time. Su Ming's mental power surged, and he asked the remaining bats to wait on the tree, and walked out of the mountain with Su Ming first. Halfway through the journey, he finally found the signal. "Uncle San, I'm Su Ming, is it convenient for you to talk now?" "Yes, you can, I'm at home, Nangong Cheng said on the other end of the phone. I encountered a very difficult thing, I want you to give me an idea. Su Ming roughly told the story. Nangong Cheng is the deputy director of the branch. At this level, he has seen many injuries and deaths. He did not show too much surprise. After listening to Su Ming quietly, he asked, I tell you, you must call the police immediately. Although there is no witness, the current investigation and evidence collection methods are very technological, and the evidence at the scene is enough to prove that it has nothing to do with you. On the contrary, the longer the time is delayed, the more evidence will be destroyed. When you are discovered again, you can't explain it with 10 mouths. I think so, but they are dead, but I am fine. This is hard to explain, Su Ming said. Didn't you say that your bodyguard is very powerful? You can come to reproduce the scene. Moreover, Su Ming is a bit famous in Yangchuan City. He is by your side to protect your safety. It is reasonable, Nangong Cheng said. Okay, I understand. Also, I plan to notify the Provincial Academy of Agricultural Sciences about the discovery of vampire bats. I have acquaintances in the Academy of Agricultural Sciences. It is very dangerous to keep this mutant animal in the mountains. It may hurt people and destroy the local biological environment, Su Ming said. This shouldn't be a big problem. As far as I know, there is no zoo in Moxie County. Su Ming, remember one thing. Since you are indeed innocent in this matter, tell the truth and don't hide anything. If you make up a lie, you need 2 lies to plug the loophole. Criminal investigators have a sharp eye, and making up lies will easily reveal flaws. As for business matters, I personally think you can rest assured that no one will spread panic news for an accident. After discussing with Nangong Cheng, Su Ming hung up the phone. Some of Nangong Cheng's words were like a light that opened Su Ming's eyes. My previous thinking was still too petty. I always felt that I had to find connections and go under the table when something happened. This idea cannot be said to be completely wrong, but it is more of the thinking of ordinary people. As for my current actual situation, as long as I don't take the initiative to die and don't do evil, no one will put the shit pot on my head. Moreover, as the enterprise grows bigger, it must focus on stability. It is best not to be involved in too many shady things. Illegal means are like the sunflower manual. It seems to be effective quickly, but there are endless troubles. It is like digging a hole for yourself, and it will sooner or later hurt yourself. I have already achieved so many honors, there is no need to bother to hide or wash anything, and there is no need to ask Liang Sichen to give gifts. As long as I am upright, everything will go on the legal path in the future. I can't ruin myself. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 604. Remember, call the police. You are innocent, don't panic, don't be confused, tell the truth. These were Nangong Cheng's last words on the phone. After hanging up the phone, Su Ming thought for a long time. Different locations determine different ways of looking at problems. After a phone call with Nangong Cheng, Su Ming suddenly realized that he had made a fortune too quickly, but his mentality had never changed well. He still considered issues from the perspective of a common man and an ordinary businessman. That kind of peasant-style calculation may succeed in stealing chickens once or twice, but it will greatly limit your own pattern and vision. If he hadn't talked to Nangong Cheng and played a little clever trick, he might have been able to pass the test, but it would be like planting a time bomb around him. Once it exploded, it would shake his foundation. It is clear that he has done nothing bad and is innocent, but he has left a hidden danger and is still complacent and thinks he is smart. Isn't this stupid? Looking in the long run, once you become dependent on conspiracy methods, you will habitually take shortcuts whether dealing with people or running a business, which is never a good thing. There are no shortcuts in the world. The road saved today will be doubled in compensation at some point in the future. After finally getting to where we are today, I should get used to thinking about problems in an upright manner, making plans openly, using conspiracy to solve problems, and exerting a positive influence on individuals and enterprises. So he directly called the police and notified Professor Chu from the Academy of Agricultural Sciences. Then he took Su Meng back to the scene of the incident and used his mental power to communicate seriously with the large group of vampire flying foxes. A few days later, Moxie County reported a murder case to the Superior Huachin City. An Italian businessman intended to invest in Suntown and discovered a local mutated vampire bat. Su Ming from the Yangchuan City Zoo happened to have had contact with Su Ming before returning to Suntown to visit relatives. The two went into the mountains together to look for traces of vampire bats. Encountering a large group of bats in the mountains, the foreign businessman, his two bodyguards and translator were attacked and killed. Fatal knife wounds were found on the body of the translator. After investigation and evidence collection and the recollections of the two survivors, it was found that the internal interests of the other party were unevenly divided. In addition, the situation was tense at the time and a fire broke out. The leading foreign businessman is a senior consultant for a European pharmaceutical company. He has already contacted the other company to cremate the body and transport it back to the country. The other company recognized the investigation results of Moxie County Police. It doesn't matter if you don't approve. You, a pharmaceutical company, come here to develop tourism, but you secretly go into the mountains to look for mutated bats. You obviously have no good intentions. If you don't cause trouble, you are lucky. What are you talking about? In addition, the local police cooperated with the Provincial Academy of Agricultural Sciences and the Yangchuan City Zoo to conduct a dragnet search in several nearby mountains and captured nearly 1,000 vampire bats, which were handed over to experts from the Academy of Agricultural Sciences and the zoo for processing. To avoid causing panic, the news was not widely reported. However, another piece of news was published in the newspaper, which caused a moderate sensation. A natural limestone cave was discovered in the mountains 20 kilometers away from Suntown in Moxie County. The entire cave extends more than 4,000 meters below the surface. It is the deepest natural cave discovered in China so far. It has extremely high mineralogical and archaeological significance. In view of the scientific research value, the Chinese Academy of Sciences has dispatched experts and working groups to conduct protective exploration and excavation. The first ones to discover the cave were of course Su Ming and Professor Chu. Strictly speaking, it was Su Ming. After he made the call that day, he used his mental power to communicate with the bat group and found that this group of bats actually had an unknown nest. He followed the large group of bats to find the cave. No wonder there are so many vampire bats, but they do not cause any disturbance to the humans down the mountain. They have always been active near their nests, and this cave is too deep. With more than 1,000 bats hiding in it, it is simply a drop in the ocean. Su Ming walked down the cave for a whole day, and finally found strong mental fluctuations at the bottom of the cave. The spiritual power emanated from a piece of stalactite at the bottom of the cave. Su Ming was shocked to find that he seemed to be able to absorb this spiritual power. It took him another day to absorb all the spiritual power. Animal Friends has been upgraded again, but unlike the previous upgrades, this upgrade does not bring obvious functions, but it makes his own mental power more refined. For example, the original mental power was 58% liquor, but now the mental power is pure alcohol. Purer spiritual power means more effective use. Whether it is the effect of controlling and communicating with animals, or possessing souls, or energy storage beads, they are all at a higher level than before. The most direct thing is that when he had full mental power, he could infuse one energy storage bead in the past, and the total amount was only 3, but now, the amount can be doubled. After absorbing the spiritual power of the stalactite, the cave was of little value to Su Ming. He simply handed it over to the state, and he made another small contribution. A total of 1,024 vampire bats were found, a very speechless number. The Academy of Agricultural Sciences and the relevant departments at higher levels each asked for a part to study, but for the time being, no special value was found. The remaining 600 or so were given to Su Ming, brought back to the zoo and temporarily locked in a cage. Strictly speaking, Su Ming's biggest gain from this trip was bringing his mother to Yangchuan City. After getting out of Antonio's place, Su Ming thought about it and still felt uneasy. Mom would not let anything go wrong, so she must take over at all costs. Mother Su is a clear-headed person. Sulijun died, several foreigners died, and Su Ming's business grew bigger and bigger. Many clues show that if she continues to stay in Suntown, she will not only not help Su Ming, but also distract him. Su Ming is going to buy a small villa for his mother in Yangchuan City, right next to Zhao Yun's house. Mother Su said there is no rush. Since you are here, let's see if there is anything I can do to help you. Su Ming was speechless, thinking that I work so hard, just to make my family live more comfortably and easily, but you, old man, have money and time now. You can obviously enjoy a leisurely old age, but you can't stay idle. This is how a family is. The son cares about his mother, and the mother always thinks about what she can do to help her son and reduce the burden. Do it if you want to do it, Su Ming can't stop it, but what can a female comrade do at such an old age? Is she going to help me with the accounts? She doesn't understand the accounting industry. As a result, Su's mother looked through all the work on hand of Su Ming, and pointed to the column of Director of Lure Community Committee with a smile, saying that I have nothing to do anyway, and I can't help you with anything else, so I will be the deputy director of this community to relieve you of your burden. An old lady in charge of the neighborhood committee is a perfect match. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 605. In the zoo, Su Mama is the queen. Before she officially took up the post of director of Daowen Community Residence Committee, she felt the enthusiasm of the zoo staff and several companies under Su Ming, and invited them to dinner one after another. Su Ming smiled and let everyone go. If he did not accept the kindness, it would make the employees feel that he, the leader, had something against them. It happened that my mother had just come to Yangchuan City, so she could get to know everyone. When I was busy in the future, my mother would not be too lonely. There was only one thing, inviting to dinner was fine, but gifts were not accepted. Last time, the zoo held a party member learning activity that was rare in 10 years. Su Ming still remembered that the party committee secretary Sister Tong conveyed the spirit of the central government's instructions, and party members and cadres should manage their families well and prevent problems from happening. The employees of his subordinate units were fine, but soon, the news that Su Mama came to Yangchuan City to settle down disappeared, and various partners came to visit one after another, and invitations flew in like snowflakes. At first, Su's mother accepted all the guests. They were all friends, so it was not good to favor one over the other. But within 2 days, the invitations piled up like a mountain. If she accepted all the invitations, she would have nothing to do in the second half of the year. So she had to selectively decline some of them. The minimum threshold for being eligible to invite dinner was entrepreneurs with a certain scale and climate like Ren Chen and Ding Jing. Originally, Su Ming did not inform anyone, but Wang Hao knew about it, and Wang Jianxi also knew about it. He even took time out of his busy schedule to invite Su Ming and his mother to his house for a meal. After the meal, Su Ming and Wang Jianxi chatted in his study for half an afternoon. It was not until this time that Su's mother really understood what kind of career her son had created. Su Ming himself did a few things quietly. Immediately afterwards, Su Ming and Nangong Cheng had a family dinner, which was Su Ming's thanks for his advice at a critical moment, and at the same time, he learned from Nangong Cheng. Wang Jianxi's perspective is quite lofty, and what he talked about with Su Ming were all high-level things, tending to be policy-oriented, Nangong Cheng has rich experience in dealing with middle-level cotters, grassroots cotters and local leaders, and can give Su Ming a lot of practical inspiration. He has always kept in touch with Professor Chu. Antonio has taken a fancy to the mutation value of the giant flying fox, and the Chinese government has also paid some attention to it, and has drawn experts to form a project team to conduct research. Professor Chu is one of them. The content of the research is confidential, but Professor Chu has more or less revealed some to Su Ming. There is no progress. Professor Chu actually hopes that Su Ming can also join the project team, but Su Ming declined, because he knows better than anyone that the mutation of the flying fox is entirely due to the spiritual power in those stalactites. At that time in the cave, he found that spiritual power can be absorbed, and he absorbed it subconsciously. This thing is like throwing a sponge into the water, either the sponge is full or the water is absorbed. When he came to his senses, the spiritual power in the stalactite was sucked dry by himself. Therefore, there will be no substantial progress in the research on flying foxes. The newly discovered deep cave in the mountains of Moxie County has been taken over by the research unit. Su Ming is very satisfied with this result and has completely removed himself from the list. Even if the family behind Antonio finally finds the connection between vampire bats and caves, they can only hold their noses and admit their bad luck. No matter how powerful the foreign family is, they will not dare to confront the Chinese government. If they dare to make any unusual movements, the Moxie County government can easily suppress them. There will be basically nothing for him to do in the future. The big flying foxes in the zoo are temporarily imprisoned in cages in the park from morning to night. Hundreds of bats about the size of children hang upside down above the cages. They are densely packed and spectacular, like a forest that has grown upside down. The zoo is in contact with a slaughterhouse in the city, and a batch of pig blood and pig offal are transported every day for these bloodthirsty demons to eat. Every little eye is blood red. The feeding of vampire bats has become a new attraction in the zoo. People have an animal side in their bones. The bloody and exciting scenes and the legend of vampires have attracted many tourists. Every time the bats feed, there are a large group of people watching. In addition, Su Ming found Moran International. Strictly speaking, he went directly to Ludmila. Antonio's 2 bodyguards impressed him. The zoo also has security guards. There are many young men among the lure people who have seen blood and fought on the battlefield, but compared with the 2 bodyguards, they are not on the same level and are very unprofessional. Bodyguards are not thugs. It does not mean that they have to be strong, fight and dare to risk their lives. Security work is a systematic science. A qualified bodyguard must not only have excellent skills, but also have many professional qualities, such as driving various vehicles, using various weapons, predicting situations, handling emergencies, and even using some high-tech products. When it comes to fighting, Su Ming and the lure people are not afraid of anyone. They are more than enough to be thugs or even killers, but they are still lacking as bodyguards. What Su Ming needs now is not a fighter, nor a killer. His wealth is getting bigger and bigger, and he has come into contact with all kinds of people. There are also a few people around him who must be taken care of. He needs a professional, legal, and presentable bodyguard team. Moran International is a world-class mercenary organization. One of its biggest businesses is to protect wealthy people and politicians from various countries. It is a well-deserved expert in this field. Su Ming plans to hire Moran International instructors through Ludmila to train a reliable private bodyguard team composed mainly of lure people and cooperate with the current security guards of the zoo. After doing these things secretly, Su Ming did not tell anyone for the time being, and then took Nangong Yan and his mother to buy a house. The result was not satisfactory, and they did not buy it. Su Ming's family did not like the real estate within 5 kilometers around the zoo. There were good houses in the city, and Su Ming was willing to spend money. He originally wanted to buy a villa for his mother in the community where Zhao Yun lived, but his mother felt that it was too far from the zoo and it was not convenient for her to do the work of a neighborhood committee aunt. Letting his mother manage the neighborhood committee was originally a casual remark, but I didn't expect that she would be so concerned. Come to think of it, people feel lonely in their old age, and finding something to do can be considered as passing the time. It is close to the zoo, and Su Ming can also take care of it. Finally, it was decided to choose a quiet and good location in the zoo park and build a small villa alone. A month passed in a blink of an eye. Cai Liming of Washi Films sent news that the final box office of Zootopia in North America was released. It was higher than Cai Liming's expectations, but lower than Su Ming's estimate, with a total box office of only more than $4 million. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 606. For more than $4 million, Su Ming was finally able to get a share of $980,000, which was more than the highest price offered by Disney Pictures. Without having to pay for the priority use of animals, the effect was much better than cooperating with Disney Pictures. It also has a good reputation. Several foreign film review sites that are known for their professionalism and venomous snakes gave the final comprehensive ratings above the passing line. It has even brought Douyin Entertainment a certain reputation at home and abroad. Due to the continued sluggishness of Chinese-language films in the international market in recent years, a box office of $4 million is really rare, and several well-known domestic media have specifically reported on it. To the outsider, $4 million is not a big deal, but within the domestic film and television industry, it has really shown its face. At least now Douyin Film and Television is no longer unknown in the industry. It is an absolute rising star. People in the industry mention Douyin. In film and television, the attitude is basically positive. Logically speaking, Su Ming should be satisfied. In fact, Su Ming was not only disappointed, but also disappointed. Because the total box office of $4 million was too low compared to his expectations. Zootopia of Horror has 3 correct views and a novel concept. It does not involve sensitive topics such as politics and race, and does not follow the vulgar and kitsch route. Instead, it takes the protection of animals as an entry point in a very subtle way. It has a very wide audience, and it is unprecedented to use real animals for filming. The film's inherent qualities, in Su Ming's opinion, were completely in line with the world's mainstream values. He had never told anyone about it, but he expected that when this film was released in North America, it would most likely cause a sensation, go viral, and become a box office success. I dare not say it will exceed $100 million, but Su Ming is still confident about $30 to $40 million. If he is lucky, he should be able to tie the hero's $50 million. This was Su Ming's inner expectation. At the beginning, he did not choose Disney Pictures, which has a long history and strong influence, but chose East China Normal University, which has a total box office of several million dollars in a few years. To a large extent, he just chose it. Split account model. If the total box office of this film is 50 million, Su Ming can get a little over $10 million, and if he can scrape it together, he will have the confidence to formally put the acquisition of the zoo on the table with the government and solve the problem once and for all. Who knows, not even 5 million. He originally wanted to pretend to be cool but was suddenly turned into a purple eggplant by the foreigner. Su Ming felt aggrieved. If the reputation abroad is not good and does not meet the appetite of foreigners, it proves that his vision is not good enough, his ethics is not enough, and he does not have a deep understanding of international movies, so the box office is not good, then he will accept it, but his reputation is not bad, and it is above the passing line. The freshness rating on Rotten Tomatoes even reached 72%. This score is not particularly high, but it shows that the general direction is correct. Blockbuster movies such as Superman, Fast and Furious, and Batman all have similar scores to Zootopia. Why is Zootopia's performance so poor? Faced with this problem, Cai Liming from China Normal University gave an explanation that left Su Ming speechless. Because our motherland is strong, but not strong enough. The North American market is mainly the American market. The United States is actually very hypocritical. If we were a truly backward, poor and weak country, they would be happy to open their arms and market to us, showing that the big developed countries have a big heart. If we are strong enough, they will not hesitate to learn from us. China's current international status just makes the United States wary. Don't look at them shouting about racial equality every day, but what are they actually preaching? They are lacking something. The status of Asians in the United States, especially Chinese, is even lower than that of Indians, let alone compared to Korea and Japan. We have encountered certain resistance in getting 400 films. With a box office of 10,000 yuan, Mr. Su, I personally think it is something to be proud of. Cai Liming said a lot of roundabout things, which made people feel that this time the box office was not very successful, mainly because of the suppression of Chinese culture by US imperialism, the hatred of the country and the family, which caused the box office of Zootopia to become a victim of the game between great powers. If he had been a passionate young man and a known Big V, he might now share the same hatred with Cai Liming and curse the US imperialist bastard. However, Su Ming keenly captured the key point from his words. We encountered certain resistance in scheduling and screening times. This was the direct reason for the box office failure. On the one hand, this may be due to the cultural exchanges between the two countries hindering the national economic competition, but in Su Ming's view the main reason is that the distribution company Huaxi Pictures lacks the ability to control the North American market. It is also a Chinese language film. Why does Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon Hero get good film schedules, is not boycotted, and is a box office success? Cai Liming laughed, Mr. Su, I don't deny this. Strictly speaking, China Normal University did not provide much positive influence for the release of Zootopia in North America this time. Su Ming had already prepared some words to prove his judgment, but unexpectedly Cai Liming openly admitted the shortcomings of the Chinese Normal University, which made Su Ming unable to speak. He still appreciates Cai Liming's honesty. Everyone is understanding. It's pointless to make excuses to deceive people, so he said, let's just talk about it, Mr. Cai. I will definitely make another film in the future. I don't want to give up on the North American market. What do you have, suggestion? Cai Liming thought for a while and did not answer directly. Instead, he asked with a smile, Mr. Su, why do you think Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Heroes were successful? Strong Chinese culture. Su Ming paused, then continued, there are also co-productions. These two films are labeled as Chinese, but at least half of the production teams are foreigners. Strictly speaking, these two films are the product of the merger of the East and the West. Yes, Cai Liming nodded slightly, to use an inappropriate analogy, an American and a Chinese give birth to a child. As long as the child shows a little bit of brilliance, the Americans will feel that the child has inherited the American legacy. Excellent genes, and the Chinese people will think that this must have inherited the fine traditions of China. On the contrary, if there are some shortcomings, they will instinctively think that it is caused by the other party, therefore, both parties will regard this child as their own masterpiece. If we can find the exotic charm in this child, it will be the icing on the cake. Such a mixed-race child is the most popular and cared for son in the United States and China. On the contrary, one-sided filming can only be done in foreign countries. He was raised by a stepmother who was disliked everywhere and had no one to rely on. You mean, if you want to succeed in North America, you have to bring in foreign production personnel, Su Ming said. It is best to cooperate with an experienced large company for shooting. In addition, CAI-Liming paused for a few seconds and said slowly, through Zootopia, Dowin Pictures has already gained a good reputation in North America. It is not difficult to find big companies to cooperate in filming. Then do we need to change to an influential publisher in North America? Su Ming asked half-jokingly. CAI-Liming was silent for a few seconds and nodded seriously. That's exactly what I want to say. I very much agree with your idea. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 607. Su Ming frowned slightly and stared at CAI-Liming for several seconds. After confirming that the other party was not joking, he said, Mr. CAI, can you explain your words in detail? Su Ming said that he wanted to change a publisher. There was a joke in it, but it was not entirely a joke. He just put some pressure on CAI-Liming and Huashi. It is indeed difficult to open up the North American market, but it does not mean that there is no way to start. Business cooperation, profit first. If you can't do it, then I will change to a good one. As an employee of Huashi, CAI-Liming did not defend Huashi, nor did he tell Su Ming that Huashi was willing to strengthen cooperation and invest efforts to expand the market. Instead, he agreed that Su Ming would change to a more powerful publisher, which Su Ming did not expect. Isn't this pushing the business out the door? CAI-Liming saw Su Ming's doubts and said, personally, I certainly hope you will continue to choose SCNU. As the person in charge, I am also a direct beneficiary of the cooperation between the two sides. Even if Zootopia, which you think is not a box office success, has added a strong and colorful chapter to my resume in SCNU. But from an objective business perspective, continuing to cooperate with SCNU is not the best choice for you or SCNU. I would like to hear more about it, Su Ming said. Zootopia proves several points. First, Dowin Films, or simply you, not only focuses on the domestic market, but also has a vision and mind for the whole world. Second, under your leadership, Dowin Films has initially acquired the ability to develop towards the world film industry. Huashi has rich distribution experience in North America, but as you said, no matter its strength or background, it is not enough to control North American theaters, and it cannot even have a powerful influence. If the two sides continue to cooperate, it will limit the development of Dowin Films. Thank you for considering the issue from the perspective of Dowin Films, but you are an employee of Huashi Films. If I don't cooperate with Huashi, isn't it a loss for Huashi? Su Ming asked. In the short term, of course. But from a long-term perspective, breaking up during the honeymoon period and leaving a beautiful impression on both parties is always better than being forced to break up after quarreling and leaving endless hatred. Just like wearing clothes, a person who is already 30 years old is still asked to wear 13-year-old clothes. The result can only be that the person is very uncomfortable and the clothes will be torn. In fact, you have already expressed dissatisfaction with the North American box office of Zootopia. Yes, Su Ming pondered for a moment and said, in my estimation, the box office should be at least more than $20 million. CAI-Liming nodded, then if your next movie still maintains the level of Zootopia, in fact, according to my experience, if a new company enters the industry and the first movie is a small success, the second movie will mostly have the potential to be a big hit because it is more experienced. In this case, your expectations for the North American box office will definitely be higher, and Huashi's ability is indeed limited, and the two sides will have violent conflicts and dissatisfaction. CAI-Liming's words are very prescient. Huashi is a good teacher in the industry, but not a good partner for long-term cooperation and mutual promotion with Dowin Film and Television. Experts of the level of the Seven Freaks of Jiangnan can help Guojing lay a solid foundation, but it is impossible for him to become a first-class expert. The Seven Sons of Quanzhen can train Guojing to be a first-class expert, but they can't make him one of the 5 best in the world. When one party's strength improves, it must choose a better partner. The purpose of cooperation is a win-win situation, not a drag. Su Ming did not say it directly, but asked with a smile, Mr. Cai, you said that, aren't you afraid that your employer Huashi will be dissatisfied? Mr. Su, you are an insider, you should be able to see that Huashi Film has an official background, and the purpose is not only to make money, but more to promote Chinese culture. If Daowin Film can have a better platform, we do not object to Daowin Film changing its partners. In addition, he smiled and said, I personally have some small principles. I hope that my achievements are based on customer satisfaction, which will bring me economic benefits and realize my life value. To put it bluntly, I don't like to do things that harm others and benefit myself. That's too low end. He pointed to his temple. I believe there are countless opportunities in the world to benefit others and myself, as long as you are willing to use your brain. This is also a kind of life fun. Su Ming was silent, squinting his eyes, staring at Cai Liming up and down for a long time, and Cai Liming felt a little unnatural when he was looked at. Mr. Cai, I want to cooperate with Huashi. My biggest benefit is not the share of the $1 million, but the discovery of talent. I wonder if you are interested in working for Daowin Film and Television. I really need someone who can grasp the overall situation. Cai Liming was slightly stunned, pondered for a moment, and said seriously, I am very expensive. Among the vice presidents of Huashi, my income ranks first. Su Ming smiled slightly and responded with the Cai Liming style words, this shows that Huashi has a good vision, but the vision is not good enough, so I will take advantage of the opportunity and use the position of general manager with all the vice president's salary to win you over. Cai Liming smiled, Mr. Su, I will give you a reply within 24 hours. Regardless of whether I can work in the future, I am very grateful for your appreciation. 12 hours later, Cai Liming called and was willing to accept the position of general manager of the film company. After completing the handover of the work at hand, he will take office a week later. For this airborne general manager, Jiao Xiao and Nangong Huang did not show any dissatisfaction. Su Ming knew very well that Jiao Xiao had his own ambitions and ideals, and it was impossible for him to work with him for a long time. He was short of capable people, and Jiao Xiao lacked experience and capital. The two sides were complementary in the short term, and Jiao Xiao would most likely leave and fly solo in the future. Nangong Huang was Su Ming's confidant and Su Ming's spy in the company. With his relationship with Su Ming, no one would look down on him even if he was just a janitor. Moreover, Nangong Huang was still young and lacked experience in all aspects, and he needed to work step by step from the grassroots level and hone his skills. With the addition of Cai Liming, an industry expert, the core team of the film and television company had been completely built. Taking this opportunity, Su Ming officially separated the film company from the entertainment company and established Daowin Film and Television. After Cai Liming took office, he acted vigorously. A week later, Daowin Film and Television had completed the recruitment of personnel and the division of departments, and was officially established in an office building in the city. Cai Liming even had the energy to implement Su Ming's previous arrangements and reviewed the scripts submitted from various places. However, the result was not satisfactory. There were 7 scripts in total, some written by students of Beijing Film Academy and some submitted by screenwriters in the industry, but all were rejected by Cai Liming. Su Ming took a look at several rejected scripts and found that they did not meet the company's requirements. They were either not suitable for using animals or too much following the domestic market. Without a script, it was impossible to continue filming. Cai Liming's work focus shifted to finding scripts. Daowin Films was not the only one that was busy with movies. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 608. In one of Disney's indoor studios in California, a scene was being filmed. The actors wore sensor costumes connected to data cables and performed various actions in front of a green curtain, which were then processed through the post-processing computer. Special effects processing, turning into characters and scenes in the movie. Okay, that's it for today. Director Howard took off his headphones, waved absent-mindedly, walked to his small office next to the set, took out a stack of manuscript paper and quickly drew a picture of a fox on it. Looked left and right, always felt dissatisfied, crumpled the manuscript paper into a ball, and threw it into the waste basket. Dong dong. Outside the transparent glass window, Assistant Director Moore knocked on the door. Howard is a talented young director, and Moore is older, more experienced, and calmer. They can learn from each other's strengths and complement each other's weaknesses. They are a famous golden partner in Disney and even Hollywood. Come in. Howard made a mouthful of water for the coffee machine in the office. You really know how to choose the time, and I happen to buy your favorite flavor. You don't pay attention to the quality of life. How can instant coffee taste? No matter how delicious instant coffee is, it is not the original flavor, it is just a fake substitute. Moore said that, but he still made a cup of coffee, smelled it, put down the cup with a look of disgust, and asked, "You don't seem to be in a good state lately." Is it already so obvious? Howard then crumpled up a piece of unsatisfied manuscript paper and threw it into the trash can. It is my responsibility to assist you in your work. Of course I will observe more carefully than others. In the past, when you were filming Flash Wolf and serving as art director for Mulan, you were always a workaholic and rarely got off work at 4 in the afternoon. When Moore looked at his watch, bent down and picked out a wad of manuscript paper from the trash can, spreading it out on the table. It depicts a fox with a long mouth and a big tail, and his eyes reveal a hint of cynicism and cunning. Look, this is the first time I've seen you dissatisfied with the main character's look after you started shooting. Is there anything wrong with this red fox? As Moore said this, he picked up another piece of scrap manuscript paper and spread it out next to the previous piece of manuscript paper. This time, there is a rabbit with long ears on the manuscript paper, but it does not have the big teeth that are typical of ordinary cartoons. The eyes are big and round, and there is a layer of eyeshadow. Even though it is a black and white sketch, you can still see the movement of the eyes. It must be a young female rabbit. Oh, God, it seems that our director is not only dissatisfied with the male lead, but also dislikes the female lead. Not only the male and female protagonists, I now have resistance to almost every animal. Howard said distressedly, this greatly affects my work. As long as I think about the final product, I lose interest during filming. Moore shrugged, suppressed his smile, and said seriously, that would be a big problem. Howard, it took us 18 months, visiting dozens of animal experts, and using hundreds of similar animals as models to finally create the character model in the film. You participated in the whole process and finalized it. Can you tell me what bothered you? Howard scratched his head. How should I put it? Are these animals not realistic enough? Moore said, if this is the reason, I think we should talk to the producer, Mr. Spencer. Whether it is additional investment or extending the shooting time, we must present the product to the market. By the way, realistic. That's the word, damn realistic, it's bothered me for a long time. Howard threw the pencil on the table, took a deep breath, until his lungs seemed to burst, and then exhaled a long breath, like a deflated rubber ball, slumped his shoulders, leaned on the back of the chair, and said, Moore, you should have seen the movie Zootopia. Of course I have seen these magical Oriental people. I wonder if they have some kind of magic, and they can actually shoot them all with real animals, Moore said. Yes, since there are real animals, why do we still need to use virtual computer technology? As you said, no matter how delicious the instant coffee is, it is not as good as the original coffee beans. When I think about it, there are already people in the world who can use real-life coffee beans. When it comes to animal photography, we spend a lot of time and money to create virtual animals. I feel like you are drinking instant coffee. When you think about it, we have to use fake ones when there are better ones. Where do I get the motivation to shoot? Howard scratched his head in distress. What's even more disgusting is that I heard that the company had a plan to establish a cooperative relationship with the company that filmed Zootopia, renting some of the other party's animals to serve our movie, but I don't know what the reason why there was no agreement makes me even more unhappy when I think about it. Howard, you always like to think too much. Maybe this is what makes the brains of geniuses different from those of ordinary people. Moore shrugged and smiled. I have also heard this rumor. However, I personally think that non-cooperation is not necessarily a bad thing. Why? Howard asked. In Zootopia, the protagonists who connect the plot are still humans. Strictly speaking, all animals are supporting characters. At least half of the shots are for humans. In our movie, all the characters are animals. 100% of the shots are for animals. Moore said, this requires animals to have the same acting skills as human actors. Every movement and expression must be vivid, and even the eyes must be anthropomorphic. Computer special effects can do this, but can real animals do it? I think it's impossible. Of course I understand. But if real animals are used for filming, the audience will find it very novel, and the requirements for acting skills will be reduced. And we are not completely giving up on computer special effects and using real animals to star. We will add computer special effects later to complement the animals themselves. Yes. This is a good idea, real animals combined with computer special effects. There are many supporting characters that only need one expression, such as the group of moles eating popsicles. All animals can be used without any fake special effects. When it comes to shooting with real animals, Howard's creative sparks are coming out and he can't stop talking. Okay, you genius, I admit that what you said makes sense, and you have convinced me. I believe that using real animals will have more gimmicks and marketability. Moore interrupted Howard and shrugged, but convincing me is not enough. If we want to use the animals in Zootopia to film, we must first convince our producer. A large additional investment also means that our previous a lot of investment has been wasted. Haha, dear Moore, my mission is to convince you, and your mission is to help me convince the producer. Howard suddenly showed a proud smile. Moore was stunned for a moment, then suddenly realized, I fell into the trap of you, a bad boy. Haha, Moore, let's go and talk to the producer, Mr. Spencer. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 609. Hollywood has a mature film industry system. The shooting of a film is like the operation of a precision machine. There are dedicated people in charge of each link, and everyone on the assembly line has their own duties. Out of the pursuit and awe of capital, the producer who represents the interests of investors is the most authoritative person in the entire crew, both in name and in actual work. Clark Spencer is a famous producer in Hollywood and a first-line gold medal producer of Disney. He has produced masterpieces such as Animal Utopia, Wreck-It Ralph, and Winnie the Pooh. He has always been known for his almost strict high standards. After hearing the request of the two directors, Spencer's first reaction was to refuse without hesitation. The preparatory work of the whole film took 2.5 years, and the script was revised for a full 19 times before it was finally finalized and started shooting. Now all the actors have to be replaced, which is unacceptable in any way. Spencer certainly knew that Disney had intended to cooperate with China to use some real animals in the filming, but that was only a part. In China's words, it was icing on the cake, not necessary. If all the actors were replaced now, it would not only mean that a large part of the initial investment would go down the drain, but the other party would also likely demand a share of the box office revenue. Animals that can film are a rare resource, and if they are controlled by the other party, it would be a seller's market. Strictly speaking, the other party guides the animals to act, and the two parties are in a cooperative filming relationship. If the animals are not competent for the performance, they will have to go back to the original route and use computer special effects, which will delay the completion of the film and cost a lot of money. Director Howard's considerations are based on art and film itself, and he is completely on a different channel from producer Spencer, so it is difficult to convince Spencer. Moore's role was reflected at this time. He only used two reasons to make Spencer interested. First, the investment will never be wasted, and it may be saved. The planned investment for the film is $200 million, of which more than 60% is used for production, that is, storyboard, 2D graphic design, 2D character design, 3D character design, modeling, materials, lighting, animation, rendering and other technical work, and using real animals for filming. At least more than half of the funds in this regard can be saved, and the total investment will not only not increase, but will decrease. Second, the market prospects will be better. Some viewers have seen the horror Zootopia starring real animals. The North American market has a very good enthusiasm for filming with real animals. After seeing the real ones, who would want to watch fake ones? Of course, the premise is that the real animals must be vivid. In addition, the Chinese market is a big cake that cannot be ignored. A movie produced by a Chinese company and starring Chinese animals is tantamount to the best publicity. It can definitely effectively break into the Chinese market and save a lot of publicity costs. Mr. Spencer, there are big differences between the Chinese market and the Western market. China's economy has taken off very quickly, but the time is too short. In the past century of humiliating modern history, the Chinese still have the idea of a strong country with few people in their bones. On the one hand, they have a strong national self-esteem and will not allow their nation and country to be harmed. On the other hand, they inevitably admire the West, or in their own words, worship foreigners. Once our film has a Chinese creative team, it will make all Chinese people feel proud. I am sure that even if this film is terrible, it will have an amazing box office in China. Very contradictory inner emotions, they seem to value other people's views on them. Howard shrugged. Howard, I want to remind you to keep your mouth shut. Business is business. I am only analyzing from the perspective of maximizing commercial interests. Just as we Americans always fantasize about the protagonist as a superhero who saves all mankind, every country has its own not-so-good side. If the other party is British, I will take advantage of their self-righteous arrogance. If it is French, I will target their boring romance. If it is Japanese, I will take advantage of their inherent inferiority. If it is North Korean, oh, forget about North Korea. It is a piece of soil without commercial profits. Even if you sow seeds, they will not bloom. Moore said. Okay, Moore, you should keep your mouth shut too. If you continue to talk, the whole world will be offended by you. Mr. Spencer interrupted the two artists chattering. You convinced me, so I will convince the board of directors. The board of directors should send a negotiation team to China to contact the other company, and one of you should accompany them to confirm that the other party's animals are indeed capable of filming. I'll go, Howard said. Remember to bring me some good tea. That stuff tastes more refreshing than coffee, Moore said. It seems that you are not only a capable person, but also a lucky person, Su Ming said to Cai Liming with a smile. Yesterday afternoon, the headquarters of Disney Film Company called and hoped to cooperate with Douyin Film Company to jointly shoot a movie starring all animals. The title of the movie is Zootopia, which translates into Chinese as Animal Utopia or Animal Big City. Or it can be called Crazy Zootopia in the style of the previous horror Zootopia. From the phone call, the other party was very sincere this time and would send a professional team to Yangchuan City for negotiation and inspection. Su Ming agreed without hesitation. The previous talks with the Hong Kong branch of Disney Company broke down, but they were not enemies at all. At best, it was just a small unpleasantness. Besides, there are no eternal enemies in the business world. Cooperating with a well-established large company like Disney is a sure win as long as you are not too unlucky. It's not so much my luck, but it's better to say that the previous Zootopia opened up the situation. Although it didn't make any money, it gained word of mouth and eyeballs. Dowin Company entered the Western world's vision, Cai Liming said. It is not Dowin Pictures that has entered the Western vision yet, it is just animals. Only the outcome of the subsequent negotiations between the two parties will determine whether Dowin Pictures can enter the Western vision. Cai Liming has rich experience in dealing with overseas film circles. Su Ming gave him full responsibility for the specific dialogue matters on the negotiation table and only mentioned a few principles. First, Dowin Pictures is not assisting in filming, let alone renting animals, but is a cooperative filming between both parties. Su Ming is confident about this. Co-production means that the film is not imported from overseas and there is no need to compete for the annual import quota. The division of accounts will also follow the domestic film model, which is beneficial to both parties. Second, people from Dowin Film and Television must be involved in the entire production process, and at least have the position of assistant director. Dowin Company has the right to send people to learn every aspect of production, even if it sacrifices some profits. It is better to teach people to fish than to teach people to fish. You must cultivate your own film and television production team, and Disney is the best mentor. If Wang Jin is at best at the level of the Quanzhen Seven Sons, then Disney Pictures is right up there with the five wonders in the world. Dividing line. Let me tell you something, the editor reminded me that there are many chapters that need to be revised. The reason is well known to everyone. There are a lot of things that need to be changed. For some parts, it is easy to just change the wording of the paragraphs. However, it is very troublesome to change some plots. It may take an entire chapter to be changed, and the workload is still quite heavy. I'll start revising it from today until it passes. I'll try my best to make sure it's updated during this period. It may be less, but it won't be discontinued. I hope everyone can understand that writing novels is just for fun and to make a little money. There is no need to torment yourself to the point of drinking coffee. Safety first, safety first. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 610. Disney brought 5 people in charge of cooperation negotiations, a vice president of the film and television company, 2 lawyers, a bearded producer, and the film's director Howard. Su Ming attended the reception that day, but did not participate in the subsequent negotiations. He handed over the work to Cai Liming, who led the team, and the group's lawyer Liang cooperated and participated in the negotiations. Lawyer Liang worked with Su Ming when he first established the fishery company. It was just a part-time job at the time. Most of the time, he had other businesses of his own. He was the legal consultant of the fishery company. As more and more companies were owned by Su Ming, the scale continued to expand, and Lawyer Liang simply resigned from the law firm and served full-time as the legal director of the entire Dowin Group. After Nangong Yan resigned, she had nothing to do for the time being. One day while eating, she suddenly glared at Su Ming and said in a confused way, "Put business before private." Judging from the tone, it was not a good word. Su Ming then realized that he had been busy taking care of everyone, but he forgot about Nangong Yan, who had resigned. Fortunately, the positioning given to Nangong Yan has always been clear. If she has her own ideas, Su Ming will support her with money. Otherwise, the public opinion media work of all companies under Su Ming's name will be handed over to her, and Weibo will be directly handled by her. Manage. In fact, Su Ming didn't really think about her. Nangongyan resigned not long ago. Su Ming's original intention was to let her take a break and travel around the world before working. Since Nangongyan couldn't sit still, she put her work on the schedule in advance. Each company in Daowen is legally an independent company. In fact, it can be regarded as a group. Lawyer Liang's position is under the fishing company, and he is actually the head of the legal department of the group. Nangongyan's position, which appears to be lower on the surface, is under Shenyan's information department, which facilitates the collection of information about each company. It is nominally a website. The administrator is essentially the spokesperson for the entire group. After Nangongyan took office, she was very motivated to work. In addition to her daily work, she also hoped that Su Ming would arrange a special project for her. Specialized project, Su Ming touched his chin. How about you set up a Navy team? If anyone doesn't deal with us in the future, we will hack him to death. Shenyan already has someone in charge of the naval force, Nangongyan said. Su Ming was just joking. Tampering with such a shameful private matter as the Navy, how could he let Nangongyan get his hands on it and get himself into trouble? Do you really want to start a special project? Su Ming saw that Nangongyan was serious and finally asked for confirmation. Actually, my current job is no different from that of a clerk in an office, and no one above or below dares to care about me, Nangongyan said. This is not a bad thing. Su Ming's original intention was to hope that Nangong would have a more relaxed life. When he was bored, he would go to the company to sit around and have enough independent time to do whatever he wanted. Anyway, he had already passed it by now. It's the initial stage of starting a business that requires a good wife to work hard with. There is no need to exhaust even someone as close as Nangong. I thought it was good at the beginning, but it stopped working after a few days, Nangong muttered. People are lazy. As time goes by, I'm afraid that I will become a useless person and be out of touch with society and the times. All they do every day is go shopping and have beauty treatments, compare themselves to each other, and become the kind of woman I hate the most. That's it? Su Ming thought for a while and said, there is indeed a project that you can try, but in front of you, this project has no foundation. Apart from money, I can't help you much. You said, I'm not afraid of hard work, Nangong said. Su Ming smiled and uttered 3 words, run a newspaper. Ah! I'm really convinced by you. Why do you think of filing a report when you're so good? Nangongyan was greatly surprised. With the rise of the internet era, traditional media have already sunk. Except for a few official media, most traditional media are actively transforming to survive. Unfortunately for Nangongyan, instead of taking advantage of the technological advantages of the Ministry of Information, she wants to run a newspaper. Isn't it reversing the course of history? You can't let me reverse history just because of my female driver. Su Ming waved his hand and said, don't worry, listen to me. The newspaper I'm talking about is an internal newspaper. Internal report? For internal employees, Nangong said. Yes. You see, I have such a big business now, including a fishing company, a winery, a zoo, an entertainment company, a film and television company, and a real estate company. In fact, strictly speaking, even your information department can become an independent company. A technology company, the lure community, is not considered a company, but in the future I will have hundreds of employees, and the management will become more and more complicated. In addition, I am not integrating it now for the sake of operational convenience. When the time comes, I will set up a group company, and then the number of employees will increase again in a short period of time. Nangongyan nodded slightly while listening. When starting a business, we fight for opportunities at the beginning and lay out in the midterm. Later on, the importance of management becomes more and more prominent. Now the old team of the company are all brought out by me. The number of people is scattered in various companies. On average, It's not too much, and there won't be any major management problems for the time being, but that won't be the case in the future, so I want to take precautions and establish corporate culture at the founding stage of the company, enhance cohesion, and spiritually find a way for the entire company. A general direction. Just like an army must have its own military soul, every employee of our company should also know where the soul of his company lies. Upon hearing the words "our company," Nangongyan pursed her lips and smiled. Su Ming pointed at the computer screen and said, "Look, even this group or that group has its own internal newspaper. We must keep pace with the times and let every employee know clearly what is right and what is wrong in our company, and where the direction of struggle is." "I understand what you mean. But..." Nangongyan sat half of her butt on Su Ming's boss chair and said, "If you want to really establish corporate culture, an internal newspaper is far from enough. Besides, what exactly is corporate culture?" Su Ming laughed and slapped the plump part protruding behind Nangong. "You are worthy of being the top sister of the TV station. You have vision. Corporate culture is certainly not formed in a day. Publishing an internal newspaper is just the first step. Now there is no need to specifically mention corporate culture. First, put the positive news, reward and punishment news, and employee activities of our companies on it, so that employees can find a sense of belonging and pride.